We're talking about the most shocking revelations from Shiny Happy People, the Duggar Family Secrets documentary that was just released on Prime. This is part 2. Do you remember when the Duggars were building this ginormous house on the show and then finally moved in? Well, it turns out that TLC actually gave him $200,000 to help finish the house so they could move in for filming. We would often see during episodes of the show, Michelle homeschooling her children. Well, it turns out that she was using books provided to her by the ATI, which is the Advanced Training Institute. It was run by the church they were members of, the IBLP. They call them wisdom booklets, and basically people are now saying that they were just poorly sourced, made up information that unfortunately they had been teaching their children for years. Jill and Derek shared that after the birth of their child, which of course was aired on the show, they'd gone to TLC and asked them to cover their out-of-pocket expenses for the birth of their son. TLC told them that they'd paid for the expenses already and had given it to Jill's dad. Jill saw none of that money. She actually shared on the show that for 7.5 years of her adult life, she did not receive one paycheck for being on the show. All of the money had gone to her father. They eventually ended their relationship with TLC, and they shared the reason why. They said that when they went to TLC to ask to be compensated, the company wasn't able to compensate them because their father's production company was in charge of the family and the show. They'd gone to Jim Bob, and he basically said that in order for them to be compensated for the show, they had to sign a contract saying that they would forever be tied to his production company, and they said no. And just as a little side note, this fellow right here, this is Bill Gothard. Bill was the founder of the IBLP church, which is the church that the Duggars felt so strongly about and followed so closely. Well, this guy, the founder, was actually let go because there were so many allegations of him touching children inappropriately in the church that they had to cut ties. And I think the most disturbing revelation of the whole series was how the children in this church and in this family were treated. Jill shared that sharing an opinion or saying no was basically frowned on and not encouraged at all. Another thing that was shared was that they actually used rods on their children as punishment. They believed highly in spanking. Cousin Amy actually said that they called it encouragement. They'd say like, "Oh, are you going to need encouragement today?" And she said they'd say it in the sweetest, kindest way. Probably the most disturbing part for me was the blanket training. Michelle actually wrote about this in her book from a few years ago. Basically, they put a blanket down, have an infant on it, and there's something the child wants over to the side, like a toy or a favorite item. Every time the infant or toddler reaches for it, they get slapped. They think this breaks the rebellious spirit of the child. If you haven't watched the series yet, I highly recommend it. It's pretty eye-opening.